Here are 5 different kinds of seams and how and when to use each one.
This is your plain seam. You're going to use this for almost everything you do, from quilting to making t-shirts, something like that. A regular seam is going to be great. You're just going to put your 2 sides of the fabric, right sides together, and stitch straight along the edge. You can press the seams to the side, you can press them open, however you wish to finish them, but this is the most basic seam. Next we have the French seam, and this is going to be your go-to for any of your delicate fabrics, so silk or satin, chiffon. This stitch is going to enclose the raw edges and make it fancy. For this seam, you're going to sew your fabric wrong sides together. You're then going to press your seam allowance to one side and fold it in half so that the seam allowance is enclosed between the 2 sides of fabric. From there, you're just going to stitch over top, making sure that that seam allowance is tucked in, and it's going to leave you with a nice clean finish. Next, we have a flat felled seam, and this is the strongest seam out there. It's mostly used in things like denim or other workwear because it's so strong, has no raw edges, and lies completely flat. So to make this seam, you're going to go wrong sides together, and then you're going to slide your top layer over about 1/4 inch, and then you're going to fold the back layer on top of that, and you're going to stitch right next to the edge of that top layer. This is what's going to keep your seam so strong. Then you're going to open it up and you're going to top stitch right next to where that seam is, and then you're going to do another line of top stitching over that, just a bit away from the first one, and that is your flat felled seam. Next, we've got a lapped seam. This one's really great for decorative purposes. I like to use this one on patchwork, but I've also seen it done on materials like leather and fleece. So you're going to start with your fabrics wrong side together, and then you're going to fold back one of the sides. So it's going to be folded underneath, but on top you should be looking right sides together. So basically you're going to end up top stitching. Now, if you want this to lay flat, you're going to top stitch right next to the edge. But if you want it to have that cute little overlap, then you're going to stitch closer to where the raw edge is tucked underneath. You can also go in with a zigzag stitch on those raw edges just to finish them off so they don't fray. And that is how you do a lapped seam. Lastly, we have a mock flat felled seam. Now this one is great when you want the look of a flat felled seam but don't necessarily need the strength. Really, this is just an easier way of doing a flat felled seam. You're going to start just a regular seam, right sides together, and then you're going to fold the seam allowance to one side. Then just like your regular flat felled seam, you're going to stitch right next to that edge of that seam, and then you're going to move over just a little bit and stitch again. So you'll have 2 lines of top stitching. And that's how you do a mock flat felled seam.